The phone rang at 3 a.m., shattering the silence of my Seattle apartment like a gunshot. I fumbled for it, heart racing, knowing only one person would call at this hour. Ethan Graves, my boss, my obsession, my everything. 7 years as his assistant, and I'd built my life around his chaos. Until tonight, when I learned he'd chosen someone else. My name is James Carter, and I've spent nearly a decade as the shadow behind Ethan Graves, the golden boy of tech. At 35, he's the CEO of Graves'S, a Seattle-based startup turned empire, and I've been there since the beginning, organizing his life, shielding him from the world, loving him in silence. I'm 32, pale, wiry, with a knack for details and a heart that's been breaking for years. Ethan's charm is a wildfire. Reckless, consuming, impossible to resist. His blue eyes, sharp as glaciers, could pin you to the spot, and his laugh, God, his laugh, could make you believe in miracles. But miracles don't happen for guys like me, who love too deeply and speak too late. That night, the call wasn't about a missed flight or a botched investor meeting. Ethan's voice was raw, trembling. James, I need you. Now, at the office. No explanation, just urgency. I threw on a jacket, drove through the rain-slicked streets, and found him in his corner office, staring out at the city's skyline. Papers were strewn across his desk, a half-empty whiskey bottle glinting in the dim light. He looked wrecked, hair mussed, tie undone, like the world had cracked open beneath him. Ethan, what's wrong? I asked, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. He turned, eyes bloodshot. I'm getting married. The words hit like a fist. Married. He hesitated, then said, Daniel Pierce. You know him, my college friend. Daniel. The name sliced through me. I knew him. Tall, blonde, effortlessly confident. A venture capitalist who breezed into Ethan's life a few months ago. I'd seen them together at galas, laughing, their shoulders brushing. I told myself it was nothing, that Ethan's lingering looks at me meant more. But I was wrong. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. I didn't know how. You're my rock, James. I didn't want to hurt you. Hurt me? He'd already shattered me. But I swallowed the pain, nodded and said, What do you need me to do? Because that's who I was. The guy who fixed things, who buried his feelings to keep Ethan's world spinning. The next weeks were torture. I planned the engagement party, booked venues, coordinated with Daniel's team, all while watching Ethan slip further away. At the office, he was distant, his usual warmth replaced by a guarded politeness. I threw myself into work, but every task felt like a betrayal. I was building a future that didn't include me. One night, after a long day of scheduling wedding photographers, I found Ethan alone in the break room, staring at a coffee mug like it held the answers to the universe. I couldn't help myself. Are you happy? I asked. He looked up, startled. What? With Daniel? Does he make you happy? His jaw tightened, and for a moment, I thought he'd brush me off. But then he said, He's safe. He's what I'm supposed to want. Supposed to want. The words hung between us, heavy with meaning. I wanted to scream, What about me? What about us? But I didn't. Instead, I nodded and left, my heart a tangle of hope and despair. The engagement party was a glittering affair at a rooftop venue overlooking Puget Sound. I stood in the shadows, watching Ethan and Daniel work the room, their hands linked, their smiles perfect. But I saw the cracks. Ethan's stiff posture, the way his eyes darted to me when he thought no one was looking. I wanted to believe it meant something, but hope was a dangerous thing. As the night wound down, I slipped onto the balcony to escape the crowd. The air was sharp, the city lights blurring through my unshed tears. Then I heard his voice. James. I turned, and there he was, Ethan, alone, his tuxedo jacket unbuttoned, his face unreadable. You're avoiding me, he said. I'm doing my job, I replied, sharper than I meant. He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, feel the heat of him. You're more than my assistant, James. You know that. My breath caught. For 7 years, I'd waited for him to say something like that. But now it felt like a cruel joke. Then why are you marrying him? I asked, my voice breaking. He didn't answer. He just looked at me, his eyes searching mine, and for a moment, I thought he might kiss me. But then Daniel's voice called from inside, and Ethan stepped back, the moment gone. I'm sorry, he whispered, and walked away. I stood there, the wind biting my skin, knowing I couldn't keep doing this. I couldn't keep loving him, couldn't keep breaking my own heart. But walking away from Ethan Graves felt like walking away from myself. The weeks after the engagement party were a blur of pain and pretense. I threw myself into work, managing Ethan's schedule with mechanical precision, but every email I sent, every meeting I arranged, felt like another nail in my coffin. I was drowning in the life I'd built around him, and he was too caught up in his own world to notice. Seattle's spring was relentless. Rainy days bleeding into one another, mirroring the storm inside me. I'd always loved this city, its gray skies and jagged coastline, but now it felt like a cage. Ethan's wedding loomed closer, 6 months away, and I was tasked with everything from picking out table linens to coordinating with Daniel's pretentious wedding planner, a woman named Claire who treated me like furniture. I didn't care. I was used to being invisible. But Ethan wasn't invisible. He was everywhere, on magazine covers, in boardroom meetings, in my dreams. I'd wake up gasping, his face lingering in my mind, those blue eyes that had once looked at me like I was the only person in the room. Now they barely met mine. He was slipping away, and I was letting him. One rainy afternoon, I found myself in Ethan's office, dropping off a stack of contracts. He was on the phone, laughing, his voice lighter than I'd heard in weeks. When he hung up, he glanced at me, and for a moment, the old Ethan was back, warm, unguarded mine. James, you're a lifesaver, he said, gesturing to the contracts. What would I do without you? The question stung because I knew the answer. He'd move on. With Daniel, with someone else. I forced a smile. You'd survive. He frowned, like he sensed the edge in my voice. You okay? You've been quiet. Quiet. That was one way to put it. I wanted to tell him everything. How I'd loved him since the day he spilled coffee on my shirt and laughed it off. How I'd memorized the way he tilted his head when he was thinking. How I'd spent 7 years believing he might one day see me. But I didn't. Instead I said, just busy. Wedding plans, you know? His face softened. You don't have to do all this, James. I can hire someone else. No, I said too quickly. I've got it. He studied me, and I hated how easily he could read me. You sure? I nodded, grabbed my tablet, and left before I could say something I'd regret. That night, I went to a bar in Capitol Hill, a place I hadn't been to in years. It was loud, crowded, the kind of place where you could lose yourself. I ordered a whiskey and sat at the counter, watching couples laugh and dance. I envied their ease, their ability to love without fear. I was on my second drink when someone slid onto the stool next to me. Rough day? He asked. He was maybe 30, with dark hair and a kind smile. Not Ethan, but close enough to make my chest ache. You could say that, I replied, swirling my drink. I'm Luke, he said, extending a hand. I shook it, surprised by how warm his grip was. We talked for hours about nothing, about everything. He was a graphic designer, funny and unpretentious, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. When he asked for my number, I hesitated. I wasn't ready, not when Ethan still owned every corner of my heart. But I gave it to him anyway because I was tired of being alone. The next day, Ethan noticed something was different. I was in his office, going over his schedule, when he leaned back in his chair and said, You seem lighter. I shrugged. Just trying to move forward. His eyes narrowed, like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Move forward from what? I didn't answer. Couldn't. But that night, Luke texted me asking me to coffee. I said yes, and for a moment I let myself imagine a life without Ethan. A life where I wasn't the loyal assistant, the invisible shadow, the guy who loved too much. Coffee with Luke was easy. He was warm, attentive, everything Ethan wasn't. We talked about art, about Seattle's quirks, about the future. But when he reached across the table and touched my hand, I flinched. Not because I didn't like him, but because his touch wasn't Ethan's. I went home that night and cried, hating myself for clinging to a man who'd never be mine. The next morning, Ethan called me into his office. He looked tired, his usual polish fraying at the edges. "James, I need to talk to you. About us." The word was a spark in the dark, dangerous and bright. I braced myself, unsure if I was ready for what came next. Ethan's office felt smaller than usual, the walls closing in as he said us. I stood frozen, my tablet clutched like a shield. He didn't look like the untouchable CEO today, no suit, just a sweater and jeans, his hair a mess. Vulnerable. Dangerous. Us. I echoed, my voice barely steady. What does that mean, Ethan? He stood, pacing to the window. The Seattle skyline was gray, rain streaking the glass. I've been thinking about you, about everything you do for me. I don't say it enough, but you're the reason I've made it this far. His words were a knife, sharp and double-edged. I wanted to believe they meant something, but I'd been down this road before. His late-night confessions, his fleeting moments of closeness that never lasted. "You're getting married," I said, forcing the words out. "What do you want from me?" He turned, his eyes locking onto mine. "I don't know, James. I can't imagine my life without you." My heart lurched. For 7 years, I dreamed of hearing something like this, but now it felt like a trap. "You're marrying Daniel," I said, my voice rising. "You chose him, not me." He flinched like I'd struck him. "It's not that simple. Daniel, he's steady. He fits into this world I've built. But you," he stepped closer, his voice dropping. "You're the one I think about at night." Couldn't breathe. The air was too thick, too charged. I wanted to grab him, shake him, kiss him, scream at him. Instead, I said, "You can't say things like that. Not now." "Why not?" he asked, his voice raw. "Why can't I be honest?" "Because it's too late." I snapped, years of silence breaking free. "I've been here, Ethan. Every day, every crisis, every moment you needed me. I loved you through all of it, and you never saw me. Not really." His face crumpled, and for a moment, I thought he might cry. "I saw you," he whispered. "I always saw you. Then why didn't you choose me?" The question hung between us, raw and bleeding. He didn't answer. He just looked at me, his eyes full of something I couldn't name. Regret, fear, maybe love. Then his phone buzzed, Daniel's name flashing on the screen. The spell broke. He turned away, and I left, my heart in pieces. The next days were a haze. I threw myself into work, avoiding Ethan as much as I could. But he was everywhere, in meetings, in emails, in the way my phone lit up with his name. I kept seeing Luke, trying to lose myself in his kindness, but it wasn't enough. Ethan was a gravity I couldn't escape. One evening, Luke invited me to an art gallery opening. I went, desperate for a distraction. The gallery was warm, crowded, filled with paintings that bled color and emotion. Luke was at my side, pointing out his favorite pieces, his enthusiasm almost enough to make me forget. Almost. Then I saw him, Ethan across the room, alone. No Daniel, no entourage. Just him, staring at a painting of two figures embracing in a storm. Our eyes met, and the room vanished. He crossed to me, ignoring Luke, and said, "Can we talk?" Luke glanced between us, his smile fading. "I'll give you a minute," he said, stepping away. Ethan didn't waste time. I'm calling off the wedding. My heart stopped. What? I can't do it, he said, his voice low, urgent. I thought Daniel was what I needed, but I was wrong. It's you, James. It's always been you. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to, but years of hurt held me back. You can't just say that and expect me to trust you, I said. You've broken me too many times. I know, he said, his voice cracking, but I'm trying to fix it. Please, give me a chance. Before I could answer, Luke returned, his expression guarded. Everything okay? I looked at Ethan, then at Luke, torn between the man I'd loved for years and the one who might actually love me back. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing, and the silence felt like a choice. The gallery's lights seemed to dim, the air heavy with the weight of Ethan's words. I stood between him and Luke, my heart a battlefield. Ethan's confession was everything I'd wanted, but it came with too many ghosts, years of waiting, of being second best, of loving someone who might never fully choose me. I need time, I told Ethan, my voice shaking. I can't do this right now. His face fell, but he nodded. I'll wait, he said, and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Luke touched my arm, his eyes gentle but searching. You want to talk about it? I shook my head. Not yet. He didn't push, and I was grateful. We left the gallery, the night air cool against my skin. Luke drove me home, and when he kissed my cheek at my door, I felt a flicker of something. Hope, maybe, or the possibility of moving on. But as I lay in bed, Ethan's words echoed. It's always been you. The next week was chaos. Ethan canceled the wedding, and the news hit Seattle's tech scene like a bomb. Gossip swirled. Daniel was devastated. Claire, the wedding planner, was furious, and Graviton's stock took a hit. Ethan threw himself into damage control, and I was right there, as always, managing the fallout. But something had shifted. He looked at me differently now, his glances lingering, his voice softer. It was intoxicating, and I hated myself for wanting it. One night, after a brutal board meeting, Ethan asked me to stay late. We were alone in his office, the city glittering beyond the windows. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey and handed me one. I meant what I said, he started. I'm done pretending I don't feel this. I took a sip, the burn grounding me. Feel what, Ethan? Guilt? Pity? Love? He said, the word raw and unpolished. I love you, James. I was too scared to admit it, but I'm not anymore. My glass trembled in my hand. You don't get to do this, I said. You don't get to break my heart for years and then expect me to fall into your arms. I know I hurt you, he said, stepping closer. But I'm here now. I'm choosing you. I wanted to believe him, but trust was a fragile thing, and mine was in tatters. What happens when you change your mind again? I asked. When someone else comes along? He reached for my hand, and I let him take it, his touch electric. There's no one else, he said. There never will be. I pulled away, my chest tight. I need to think. I need space. He nodded, his eyes full of pain. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. I left his office, my mind a storm. Luke was waiting for me, patient and kind. A man who didn't carry the weight of 7 years of heartbreak. But Ethan was my gravity, my North Star, and walking away from him felt impossible. The next day I met Luke for lunch. He sensed my turmoil, his usual warmth tempered with concern. You're still in love with him, he said, not accusing, just stating a fact. I nodded, ashamed. I don't know how to stop. He took my hand, his grip steady. You don't have to stop loving him. But you deserve someone who chooses you first, James. Not as a backup. His words hit hard because he was right. I'd spent years being Ethan's second choice, his safety net. But could I walk away? Could I choose myself? That night, I stood on my apartment's balcony, staring at the city. Seattle had been my home, but it was also Ethan's city, and every corner held a memory of him. I thought of Luke, of the life I could have, simple, honest, free of pain. And I thought of Ethan, flawed and beautiful, the man I'd loved for so long. I made a decision then, one that felt like tearing out a piece of my soul. I had to let Ethan go, not because I didn't love him, but because I needed to love myself more. The decision settled over me like a quiet dawn, both painful and liberating. I couldn't keep orbiting Ethan, letting his gravity pull me apart. I deserved more, not just love, but respect, certainty, a future that didn't hinge on someone else's choices. The next morning, I walked into Graviton Systems with a letter in my pocket. My resignation. 7 years as Ethan's assistant had shaped me, but it was time to step out of his shadow. I found him in his office, staring at a photo on his desk. One of us, taken years ago at a company retreat, laughing under a rare Seattle sun. He looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. "James," he started, but I held up a hand. "I'm leaving," I said, placing the letter on his desk. "Not just the job. I'm leaving Seattle." His face went pale. "What? Why?" "Because I can't do this anymore," I said, my voice steady despite the ache in my chest. "I've loved you for 7 years, Ethan. I've given you everything, my time, my heart, my life. But I can't keep waiting for you to choose me." "I did choose you," he said, standing, his voice desperate. "I called off the wedding. I'm here, James." "But for how long?" I asked. "Until the next Daniel? Until you're scared again? I need more than promises, Ethan. I need to be enough for myself." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "Don't," I said. "This isn't about you anymore. It's about me." Tears welled in his eyes, and for the first time, I saw him break. Not the CEO, not the golden boy, but the man who'd lost something he didn't know how to hold. "I love you," he whispered. "I'm sorry I didn't say it sooner." "I know," I said, and I meant it. "But love isn't enough if it comes with pain." I walked out, leaving him with the letter and the photo, my heart heavy but resolute. The office felt different as I left, like a place I'd outgrown. Seattle was the same, beautiful, rainy, full of memories I'd carry forever. But I was ready to start over. I met Luke for coffee that afternoon. He listened as I told him everything, his eyes kind but steady. "Where will you go?" he asked. "New York," I said. I'd always wanted to live there, to lose myself in its chaos and find who I could be without Ethan's shadow. "I need a fresh start." He nodded, a small smile on his lips. "You're going to be okay, James. More than okay." I believed him. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Months later, I stood on a Brooklyn rooftop, the Manhattan skyline glittering in the distance. I'd found a job at a small tech firm, nothing like Graviton, but enough to keep me grounded. I was learning to love myself, to build a life that wasn't defined by someone else's choices. Luke and I stayed in touch, our friendship a quiet anchor, and maybe one day something more. I heard from Ethan once, a letter sent to my new address. He was taking time off, traveling, trying to find himself. He wished me well, and I believed him. I hoped he'd find peace, the way I was starting to. As I watched the city lights, I thought about the man I'd been, loyal, invisible, in love with a dream. And I thought about the man I was becoming, someone who chose himself, who found strength in letting go. 7 years had shaped me, broken me, rebuilt me. In the end, Ethan chose another, but I chose me. And that was enough.